The story begins with a conversation between the protagonist and his beloved girl Seraphi, who once wanted to be his wife when they finally grew up. But because of the status difference between them, she gets taken away and it breaks the protagonist permanently. Then 15 years later in Yashima province, the protagonist comes to meet a girl, and she looks rather happy to see that he made time for her, but he insists that he has some important work to do. Then she even thinks of giving him the baggage service, if you know what I mean. But he claims that he is looking for unusual Japanese sweets, and they end up engaging in a pointless conversation, and she leaves a pen drive in his hand after getting it out of her bra. It seems that this woman named Yui is an intermediary, and she keeps a bridge between the headquarters and the intelligence, and she asks if they will be able to do something together the next time. But the protagonist doesn't seem to care much, and she holds him in her melons, but he keeps on remembering the face of Seraphi, which he misses so much. Then when he still refuses, Yui claims that it is fair because no honey trap is about to shake someone like him who is the bullet of Shura, and adds that he has to be afraid of the Federation. Instead of dwelling much on the information, he starts waving his gun in front of her, and instead of shooting Yui, the protagonist shoots behind her back, and a man falls down from the curtains who has been hiding the whole time to get them down. Then another Federation guy rushes into the room with his gun, but the protagonist tackles him down to interrogate him about the information being leaked, and the man claims that it is only fair as the whole province is a spy paradise. Then when Yui asks about the man, the protagonist claims that they must have been looking for the drive, and they are from the Federation of Lucy. Then as he begins to leave, he suggests Yui leave the place to go back to her hometown to start working as someone decent, as this is something which is not suitable for her, and throws a bunch of cash in her hand. After getting to Asakusa, the announcement of Lucy's federal fighter jets being released comes to the news, and even though it might feel like a war starting with the others, the protagonist knows that the war started a long time ago. To him, modern warfare is not just about military conflict, it is also about taking over countries through economic power and politics, as everyone will need to be deployed and scattered in all areas. The main reason behind this is that most of the people in our society end up falling into honey traps, but the protagonist hopes that from now on, he will be able to change the country of Yashima. Even though the pen drive in his hand is empty, he intentionally leaked top-secret info about national defense, which is a trap for catching prey lured by lies, and that is shared house family, and the result is about to go two ways for him. One is capture, and another one is persuasion. If none of that is possible, the protagonist thinks of finishing them off for his betterment, and as soon as he enters the room, he is shocked to see that a girl is rushing his way to assassinate him. When the stabbing didn't happen, the girl started trying to kick him in his stomach by using the knife tied to her leg, and they ended up coming face to face while holding their weapons at each other at the end of the line. Then when the protagonist finally looks into her face carefully, he realizes that she is no one but Seraphi, and she recognizes him saying that he must be Hayato. Soon enough, both of them begin to fool each other, and while Seraphi thinks of Yashima's spy agency, and the protagonist keeps on thinking about her skill moves to murder someone, but they feel like it will be fine as they have managed to fool each other, and when asked about her personal life, Seraphi claims that she has been studying abroad this whole time. While the protagonist and Seraphi are growing up in the orphanage together, Seraphi gets taken by Lucy's Federation through a distant family, but the whole situation was a bought out for her. Then when asked about Hayato, he claims that he had been taken in a normal family in Yashima, but instead in reality, he was thrown into an intelligence camp to begin with. After speaking with each other for a while, Seraphi keeps on getting nervous looking at his face as before, and while speaking about their promise, the protagonist reminds her of the promise they made about getting married one day. The conversation embarrasses her, and even though the protagonist knows that she is a spy, he is unable to comprehend his excitement, and it seems that in the shared house there is no one but them right now. The whole situation keeps the protagonist awake for a while, and he is unable to comprehend how he is about to handle the situation, as if he has already fallen into a honey trap. Soon enough, the protagonist feels like he will be going to the manager's office, and he claims that he will be here for her if she needs something. On the other hand, Seraphi gets called by her Federation about the USB, and she lets them know that she will get to the USB instead of killing him. They think that it is rather unusual for someone like her to change her mind about finishing off someone. Then when she thinks of Plan H from the Federation, she remembers that the whole formation was about a honey trap, and she loses her mind knowing that she will have to do a lot of explicit things that way. This whole time the protagonist is busy thinking about Seraphi and her beautiful looks, and he forces himself to remember about the mission as much as possible, and suddenly he hears a knock on his door. When he gets to the door, he feels like there is a powerful bloodlust on the other side, and as he opens the door, he notices that she has been wearing an article of lucrative clothing before speaking to him about something. But she had nothing to do about that as she was bound by the rules of the Federation, and she even started asking him what he thought about them. Then when she asks him to tie the cloth behind her back, the protagonist does it while shaking his hand a lot, and the protagonist keeps on holding his mind correctly trying to check the stock prices. As soon as Seraphi leaves the room, she feels like she won't be able to proceed to the next step, and she once again dresses up as a cat girl to meet him. But the protagonist doesn't let the lust take him even though he is dying to have her. She feels like she will have no way other than finishing him off in this situation, and we get into the past of Seraphi and Hayato when they still used to live in the orphanage. One day when Hayato sees her crying, she reveals that everyone leaves her because of her looks, but the protagonist insists that he likes her hair and eyes, and she ends up asking him if he is about to marry her. Even though she knew that she had to be separated when they got adopted, she wanted to be with him their whole life, and the protagonist promised that he would end up finding her at the end of the time. Now that Seraphi is thinking of Hayato, she feels like if she was able to retire in a few years, then she could buy a house and live with Hayato the rest of her life, and no matter what happens, she thinks that she will be able to switch her into his side in any means necessary. On the other hand, the protagonist thinks that he almost failed in completing his task and serving his country, and promises to himself that he will one day get out of the industry protecting her. At that time, she ended up surpassing the limit wearing nothing but band-aids in her private areas, and she once again wonders if this is not about to be enough. The protagonist, on the other hand, feels like he wouldn't be able to hold on to his urges anymore, and she claims that it is okay for him to touch her, and he ends up falling into the honey trap for the first time in his life. Then, when the protagonist gets the situation while looking at her tears, the protagonist feels like she surely detests honey traps and makes her wear his shirt to cover her whole body. Just when she feels like she wouldn't be able to settle the matter this easily, some guards continue to rush into the house by crashing through the windows, and they end up taking down both of them by tying them together. It seems that these guys are the same as before which he wounded back in the whorehouse, and he is demanding him to spit out the USB as soon as possible. Then, when the guy thinks of Seraphi, she feels the urge to hide her identity as she feels like she is never about to reveal her secret identity in front of the protagonist. Just when they begin to wonder what they are about to do right now, the man commands his people to take Seraphi to another room, and he thinks of paying back the protagonist for what he had done to him the last time. But the whole situation gets solved rather easily for both of them, and they end up murdering all of the spies on their own in both rooms. When the protagonist goes on to look for her, she insists that he cannot move in right now as the room is messy. Both of them keep on lying to each other the whole time, and when he gets back home, he remembers how much he tried to look for Seraphi, but he didn't get any clue about her location. Now that she is in his life once again, the protagonist promises to himself that he will manage to take her back from Lucy's Federation, and the protagonist ends up entering the bathroom while Seraphi is showering naked. On the other hand, someone outside feels like the war has finally started after this long time of peace. Even though one would think that family share house would be nothing but a normal shared house on the inside, it is actually a secret military facility created by the Public Security Intelligence Agency. Even though the news of us might seem rather important to someone, the real purpose of the shared house is to capture spies from other countries who have been lured into this lace by false information. On the other hand, someone else has been poking around the house as well, and she seems to know about both the protagonist and Seraphi. Soon enough, some spy-looking guys come in asking her if she has some business around here, and they feel like she is no ordinary person, even though she insists that she is nothing but a backpacker. Just when he thinks of holding on to her to take her away from this place, she moves him away in one strike, and the guy is flabbergasted to see that she managed to kick away someone like him who is 140 kg and tall as fuck. Just when they keep on deepening the situation, the protagonist comes out of nowhere to remind them that they shouldn't be screaming in front of someone else's house. The protagonist takes the girl home, and she starts transferring her goods into the house, and Seraphi is unable to wonder why all of the SVR's underlings are nothing but idiots. Even though she didn't make any kind of application in this place, she insists that she forgot to make a reservation and her luggage will be coming soon enough. Then, as the protagonist thinks of her more carefully, the protagonist feels like she has been hiding her identity as she is trying her best to look like a stupid civilian, but she is probably from the CIA from the codename Freedia, as the face of her looks rather familiar to the protagonist. Seraphi, on the other hand, feels like she came in here to harm no one but Hayato, and there is no way she would let something like this happen. Then soon enough, the girl speaks out of nowhere saying that they must be Hayato and Seraphi, and she claims that she is Maria Rockwell, who was always at the orphanage with them the whole time. Then the protagonist thinks of the past a lot more and remembers that she was always stronger than the boys, and she was crazy popular among the girls, and now that she looks like a pure woman, the protagonist is unable to believe that she is the same person now. Even Seraphi feels like she is lost when it comes to looking in front of Maria, and none of them are able to believe that they have all grown up to be spies and nothing else, living in their lucid dreams of working for their missions. While discussing their silly matters, Maria ends up rushing into the protagonist's face, and her melons end up hiding his face, which annoys Seraphi a lot. Now that Seraphi thinks of what happened in the past, she feels like Maria likes the protagonist as well, and she feels like she wouldn't be able to let the situation go away this easily. They both get back at each other, and the protagonist, on the other hand, hides himself in the bunch of melons at once, and the warmth and the feeling give him even the power to judge if they have been wearing anything under it or not. Soon, when the doorbell rings, Seraphi falls down on the protagonist and Maria leaves to get the packages, and she asks for their help as soon as possible. When Seraphi wastes her time assembling furniture, the protagonist gets teased by Maria as she keeps walking up to the ladder, and she ends up sitting on his face as she makes a mistake while climbing it. They soon end up on each other's bodies, and the whole situation once again feels like a honey trap for our guy who is rather conscious about his profession. It seems that Maria was taken by a CIA upper echelon, and her superhuman athleticism and physical abilities along with her beauty ended up ranking her along with the codename of the Flesh Demon. Now that she holds him close, the protagonist claims that he will never be able to see her as a lover as he always thought of her to be a big sister for him, and she feels like he is trying his best to act cool. But even though he keeps on suppressing the matter in the best way possible, the whole lewd situation and Maria's bragging keep on giving him a tough time coping with it, and even his head begins to spin. But when he decides to become honest and starts revealing his feelings, she runs away saying that she has forgotten to buy something, as if the confession ended up hitting her in a weird way. Then when Maria keeps on purchasing stuff alone, the protagonist comes in the middle saying that they are supposed to host a welcome party for her, and Seraphi asks him to get vodka and pudding. Despite the awkwardness, the protagonist suggests that she will be able to count on him from now on as the person in charge of the shared house, and she ends up shedding a bit of tears after seeing his kind face, and she realizes that she feels the same way about Hayato as he loves about her. Then after chatting up a bit, she feels like she will conquer the protagonist in a honey trap, and their days will be as fun as they used to be if they end up working together and dream to see him working as a CIA double agent, and they could be something more. Even though the protagonist thinks of finding more information about her, the protagonist feels like they will finally be able to get back to their old days, and Maria keeps on haggling with Seraphi for eating her snacks behind her back. Knowing that she wouldn't be able to form any kind of plans on her empty stomach, Seraphi goes outside to eat some kashian on her own, and she feels like she is doing too much for some mere tasks. She feels like she should be supplied with more powerful equipment or else she might end up failing. Soon, she notices that the shop ahead of her is selling some sweets which are beloved by the protagonist, and thinks of stopping inside to take a look at them. Just when she goes on to ask the shopkeeper for the sweets, the customer beside her claims that commoners should be the ones to be served by them, and after talking to her, Seraphi feels like she must have been some kind of nobility by the way she was speaking with her. After eating her fill, she thinks of taking some for the protagonist and goes back home, and back at home, Maria gets busy with her yoga, and she reminds herself that she promised that she would make the protagonist betray his side, but she is not able to imagine how she is about to do something like that as it is close to being impossible. But she thinks that they are not able to realize that she is from the CIA by the way of her body and facial, the benefit of being pretty. This whole time, the protagonist has been watching her from the secret cameras planted in her room, and the protagonist is unable to even fathom why she is doing yoga naked, as if she belongs to some kind of cult, or maybe she is able to get the fact that she knows he has been watching her this whole time. But he feels like none of them can guess about his real identity based on how he acts and lives, and he feels like she has not been moving this whole time for even an inch as she fell asleep. Soon he dwells himself into doing some house cleaning, and Maria comes out of her room claiming that his vacuum would wake anyone up even if they are sleeping, and she is not wearing any kind of clothing as if she has no shame. When she gets asked about it, she claims that she thought of rewarding him for all of his hard work, and she begins asking him how he was able to realize that she has been naked this whole time, which the protagonist answers by saying that he has been peeking at her through the door lock. Now that Seraphi is in front of the door, she is awestruck after seeing both of them in this position, and the protagonist tries his best to make her believe that they were not doing anything. When she moves on, the protagonist feels like he will need to have a conversation with her later on, and Maria insists that she wouldn't mind the awkwardness between them if possible and starts clinging on to him. Just when he is about to run off to convince her that it was nothing, Seraphi comes in wearing some latex clothing to seduce our guy, and she claims that it is her home clothing she will continue to wear from now on. He instantly gets the point as it is nothing but a honey trap, and Maria fully undresses herself in front of both of them without abiding by any kind of house rules. Knowing that she will have to do something to make the situation rather crazy, Maria ends up running up to Seraphi to take off her clothing to reveal her beautiful body to the protagonist, as if they are a lesbian duo about to cheer up each other. Kinky Maria does a melon battle with Seraphi, and they get carried away, and the protagonist orders them not to behave like children as they have been getting dust everywhere by doing these. Maria claims that she is sorry for what she has done and cooks for them both to say sorry in her own way. At night, they feel like the food might even be better than the restaurant ones, and it seems that she has even been living as an undercover cook in her life, so it is nothing abnormal. Maria insists that she would like to have a family one day with a special someone or something. This is why she started cooking, and Seraphi asks for more food as she is unable to stop eating. The protagonist once again reminds Seraphi that she is still able to eat without gathering any fat on her body, and the protagonist feels like he might have forgotten how he used to laugh back in the days. The more he looks into their position, the more he realizes that they have spent so much time together, and they are actually like a family in this time, as they are once again living with each other as they used to do in the past. But the only difference is that they are now spies for the enemies, and if he cannot make them come to his side, he will have to finish them all off. Knowing that he has lost family in his life twice, once in the orphanage and once outside of the orphanage, Seraphi notices that he has been acting weirdly. Seraphi, on the other hand, feels like she cannot let Maria win over her position, and she insists that she will cook for them as well. She thinks that she will have to work hard as the only cooking she had done was for assassination. When the cooking is done, she feels like she wouldn't be able to allow the protagonist eating this kind of putrid food, but he adds that it is not as bad as she thinks, and he claims that they have already eaten so much as he gets back to his room. Seraphi knows that it should be terrible, and the only reason why he acted like that was because he didn't want to hurt his feelings, and while she keeps blushing on her own, the protagonist feels like his stomach is about to blast away. He feels like she must have wanted to poison her, and after generating the antidote, he gets better after that. Soon enough, he gets a message from the headquarters saying that My-6 is about to infiltrate his country, and he feels like James might be back. When the phone lets him know that there is someone lurking around the backyard, the protagonist thinks of checking out the place and notices that there is a playing card on the ground. When he takes a look at it, his previous family starts speaking with him, and the little girl claims that she will be the one to take revenge for her father, as he is the one who destroyed her precious family in the first place. She remarks that it has been 7 years since they last met, and the little girl named Emily asks him to take a look at her, wondering what he has been thinking of her current look right now. But the protagonist claims that she looks like she didn't even change a bit, as if she is still a grade schooler, and she feels like he is being rude to her out of nowhere, as she is literally 18 years old now, adding that she is a lady now. The protagonist asks Alfred if he is the one accompanying the family in here, and he claims that Emily is the current master, and he wonders what must have happened to James all of a sudden. He claims that James has already retired, and it seems that in My 6, only a few number of them wait for their codename Zizan to emerge and the aforementioned living legend known for his female spies. James once said to the protagonist that spies can spend the national budget as much as they want, and once one starts doing that, a fine girl with a honey trap will be ready to hunt him down, and he will be the one waiting on the other side. James promised that he would never quit, and Emily claims that James is now also missing, and now their whole family is in a complete mess. When the protagonist wonders what must have happened, one of them starts throwing punches at him, saying that he is the one who should know what happened, as he knows what happened 7 years ago in their family, which is why she is now about to take over with the codename of Lo. The name of Alice starts to bang inside his mind, as he has been hearing the name for a long time now, who is able to bring down those who do not succumb to honey traps, and this person is actually Emily. She asks her butlers and maids to make the protagonist pay, and they begin to fight against him with their hammers and fists, and the protagonist keeps having a hard time comprehending. Dorothy and Paul are loyal servants of Emily, and they still work under Emily. He feels like it will be a bad situation if all 3 of them hits him at once. But when they keep on targeting the protagonist, Seraphy and Maria both start looking at them with their eyes and weapons, ready to strike at any moment now. The main butler thinks that the protagonist outplayed them, and he insists that they must have entered the premises like the common burglars. He adds that Emily should show more dignity to escape from their sticky situation. Then, when Emily thinks of leaving, the protagonist claims that they might be able to solve this situation in a conversation, and she claims that there is no way she will listen to him, instead of getting the revenge by taking all the confidential information from him. When she leaves, she states that she made a mistake by thinking of him as her real brother, and the protagonist feels down, and even Seraphy is able to see through his emotions. The more she thinks of it, the more she feels like she doesn't really know the current version of the protagonist, as she barely knows about what happened to him after she left him all alone on his own. The protagonist, on the other hand, is unable to imagine how Emily has become a spy and how James ended up quitting on his own accord, and he assumes that there is a chance they must have been lying to him, but it seems that they were rather serious about their intentions in the first place, so there is no chances of lying. Then, when the protagonist notices Seraphy along the line of the shore, she begins to call him, and the protagonist feels like it is about to be another honey trap for him. He begins asking her what she must be doing in this spot, as she must have college now, and she claims that the class had to be cancelled, but the protagonist knows that he has never seen her go to college. When she starts asking him about his worries, the protagonist feels like he has to strike, while the rod is hot, and starts waving his hands over her shoulders, talking about family. The whole situation feels to her as if he is proposing to her now, and she begins to wonder what must be happening between them if they end up getting married, as she would get rammed every night. But the protagonist has been speaking of their situation back at home, her and Maria, and they have been acting like they are back in their past when they were still in the orphanage. Seraphy realizes that she is thinking too much about something else, and thinks of letting the thoughts go for now. When Emily goes on to meet the manager, he feels like talking to her wouldn't do anything useful for him, as she is nothing but a child, as if she is interested in playing childish games. But the idea of him staring at her undies makes him rather nervous when she charges against him, and she undresses herself almost instantly, plotting a honey trap for him. In the end of the line, she ends up forcing him to bow down to her, adding that he will have to act like a slave in front of her, and he promises that he will do what she wants him to do. She ends up taking out the picture of the apartment he owns, and it is the same one where the protagonist and the others live right now. While talking down the road, Seraphy and the protagonist both are nervous, as if they keep on sensing the worst out of each other the whole time. Then she suddenly asks him if he has a family that he used to treasure in the past, and she doesn't know about it particularly, and the protagonist is unable to wonder why she is being so specific all of a sudden. Then the protagonist realizes that she must have been speaking of Emily and her people, and she adds that she couldn't hear much, and the protagonist feels like he is relieved. He realizes that Seraphy is concerned about the protagonist having someone special who she didn't get to know, and he thinks that telling her about it wouldn't hurt someone in the first place, so it will be all right. Then the protagonist starts revealing that Emily is like a sister to him, and he used to study abroad and spent a year in the UK of Britannia, and even though it was a joint operation between Yakima and Britannia, it was his first big mission in his whole life. When he met James and his daughter Emily, he was welcomed by the man like a father, and he asked him not to be nervous and accepted him as his own son. Even Emily started to get close to him along with all of the other people at the mansion, and even though it existed for 1 year, he had to learn a lot from them both as a spy and as a person. The protagonist claims that a lot of things happened between them, and they are not his family anymore as they are staying as tourists here. As Seraphi feels sad hearing his story, and while the protagonist thinks of the worst out of the situation, Maria comes out of nowhere saying that they are in trouble as their shared house has become a property of the Ashley family. The butler shows a contract in front of him, meaning that his lease agreement has been terminated, and they will cover all the expenses for all that as well. The whole situation makes the protagonist feel like the whole planning backfired on him now, and the butler thinks that they have done the mission as everything is still inside of the house. But the protagonist knows that no matter what they think of planning to search for, they are not about to find anything, and even Maria and Seraphi think that their mission will be over if something like this happens. Then the protagonist claims that they will have to stay at the hotel for now, and he will be the one to cover the bills later. Then, as he is determined of the situation, the protagonist promises to Alfred that he will end up protecting the shared house no matter what, and he let Emily know the truth about his promise after all, as he is not about to back down. One day in the past, when the protagonist was accompanying Emily, she was eager to take the lollipops ahead of her, and she protested at first, knowing that her father doesn't think that she should take something like that, as he is rather conscious about her health and beauty. Even after hearing her, the protagonist made her take one and asked her if she wanted something else along with it, as he thought that she didn't have to become a spy like him and her father, as she deserved a normal life. After hearing him speak so highly about her, she would keep on looking at his face as if she were looking at her guardian angel ahead of her. Now, the same man is standing in front of her mansion's gate, as he truly wants to get the house back along with the shared house transfer agreement. Then, when he starts making his way through the gate, Emily wonders if he is about to be able to enter the house, and Alfred lets everyone know that he is present in front of the gate, and they should treat him in their gradual self like the one previous incident. Just when the butler finishes the call from Alfred, Maria comes out of nowhere asking him about the location, as if she has lost her way into the mansion's grounds. Then, in the middle of the talk, when Maria keeps on acting like a dummy, he starts showing off with his muscles as if she is about to get beaten by him, adding that he will end up throwing him out of the place himself. But instead of backing down, she ends up showing him her rage in her own way by splitting her clothes as well, and her melons start to feel like they are about to burst out of the bras. The man thinks that she has normally been working out, and it is impressive, but he feels like she wouldn't be enough to go against him, and they end up starting to haggle with each other. On the other hand, Seraphi reaches out to the maid, and when she confirms that she doesn't have an appointment with Emily, she begins to attack her, and Seraphi gets invisible all of a sudden after throwing the knives. When she looks at the other side, Seraphi climbs down and slashes the broom in her hand, and no matter what she takes in her hand, Seraphi keeps on blasting them away as if they are nothing but useless stuff. Even so, the maid claims that there is no way she would let her do anything to let her get into the way, and Seraphi promises that she would never let her to get into the protagonist's way as well. The protagonist, on the other hand, reaches out to Alfred, and he remarks that Dorothy and Paul both have been taken out by him, as he must be the one named the Bullet of Shura. But the protagonist is confused as he did nothing like that, and Alfred points out that someone else might have entered the mansion, and the protagonist remarks that he will get into the point straight as he doesn't have much time to waste as he thinks of getting back the papers. But the man insists that he doesn't have them since Emily is the one handling the matter, and he remarks that the way the protagonist dresses would have surely pleased James as he is the one who taught him to dress like this. Just after praising Alfred as well, the protagonist begins to blast the guns on him, and when the bullet touches his tux, the protagonist realizes that they are surely bulletproof, and he starts waving his short staff to hit the protagonist. But the old man keeps on dodging the attacks in his own way, and starts countering by doing gymnastics, and even though the old man's age is secret, the protagonist feels like he is still the same as he used to be in the past. Then, when the protagonist's pistol gets knocked away by him, the old man ends up tackling him down on the ground, and he claims that even though he is not about to finish him off, the protagonist will have to sleep for a while. When the old man thinks that his winning is about to come, a sharp and heavy bullet hits him, and he feels like he is about to lose his breath. It seems that the protagonist brought a special kind of weapon with some rare bullet to hit him directly, which was hidden under his tuxedo. As the old man gets taken down, the protagonist reaches the room where Emily is right now, and she claims that she got tired of waiting for him this whole time and thinks of drinking together. Instead of giving out the agreement in his hands upon being asked by the protagonist, she starts entering it in her panty, assuming that she still has to get some kind of payback for what he has done to her family. In the past, when Emily reached out to her father, she noticed that the protagonist was nowhere to be found, and he claimed that even though they had spent more than a year looking for Lucy's double agents, they had taken away everything from him. No one other than the protagonist was the one who betrayed them in the first place, and now that the betrayal has made them suffer so much, the protagonist begins to explain why that situation was rather obvious to him. Then when she asks him about the betrayal, he claims that it is her father who taught him that they would have to go as far as betraying the family, and there is no way he could have done it while listening to his mentor. But now Emily thinks that he is still in the wrong, as he should have been the one to fight for her, and the protagonist claims that he couldn't do anything as it was a business matter, so he didn't have anything to do with her. Then suddenly, the protagonist feels like his body is burning, realizing that she must have mixed something in his drink, and she points out that she used perfume to disable him, which is also rather aphrodisiac. Emily points out that she will be fine because of the antidote that she has, and she will send the pictures of their intimate situation to Yashima. The protagonist begs her, saying that she cannot do it because of her father, but she already knows that her father used to change women in every mission, as his father was a master honey trap artist, and now she is about to play her father to wonder how much he is able to resist her. Soon enough, the protagonist manages to overpower her and claims that she is playing as a honey trap since she might have a lot of experience with other guys, but she claims that it is the opposite since she is still a virgin. He feels rather relieved after hearing this, and she is flabbergasted to see his reaction in this, and the protagonist becomes honest with her about the concept of family, and he is sorry for what he had to do. Emily also reveals that she wanted him to become a spy for Britannia as well, and the protagonist promises that they will always be together. After closing her eyes for a kiss, she realizes that her hands have been tied to the bed, and he is nowhere to be found. When the trap works, the protagonist claims that the neutralizer on his clock took a lot of time to work, and now that he has found the paper, he should be going, and Emily keeps on looking at him go. When he starts running away, Emily realizes that he has been acting the whole time, and she will never be able to forgive him like that. After some days, the protagonist and the others manage to get their house back, and Seraphy claims that she is rather happy to see that she will be able to live with the protagonist once again. As soon as they enter the house, they feel like something is really different about the house. They meet Emily inside the house, and she welcomes them, saying that she is about to live with them as well from now on, and they are already unable to fathom the meaning of her words at this point. The next morning, Seraphy can be seen wearing her nightgown, and she keeps on looking out in the corridor to check out to make sure that no one is present in there, so she will be able to take the chance to manipulate the protagonist on her own. She dreams of how she will start manipulating him into marrying each other, but once she enters the room, she notices that Emily is already there climbing his chest, and she is playing her dirty tricks on him once again. Just when Seraphy enters the room, she is unable to fathom what they have been doing or what Emily has been doing, but Maria comes in the room to entrap her with her netting gun, which annoys the heck out of Emily. While Emily keeps on bickering about Maria and her gun, the protagonist and the others start noticing the gown on Seraphy, and she feels like she will be embarrassed to death, and they move on to the part of having breakfast. The protagonist is rather annoyed that he will have to be the one to prepare the breakfast for them, and Maria thinks of cooking the next day for them all. Now, after seeing Maria and her enthusiasm, the protagonist feels like there is no way he will be able to ever become comfortable around her, as she is his enemy, the same person whom he used to admire like a big brother in his childhood. Now another person whom he has to be wary of is Emily, who is still thinking about revenge, and Seraphy, his childhood love, who still takes all over his heart, competing with everyone else. Then when Emily starts to float her fork around and ends up dropping it on the ground to make it a problem for the protagonist, Seraphy smacks the whole thing on her face. Even though Emily feels like clinging onto the protagonist will be a great option, Maria comes out of nowhere and knocks the hell out of her mind by using her melons. When that isn't enough, Emily starts to get bullied by her even more, and the protagonist shuts them all up by banging his hands on the table, as he has had enough of it already. Seraphy, on the other hand, gets into the market once again to eat her favorite sweets and asks her team to send some new information about the intelligence, which will end up ensuring her victory. Meanwhile, later the protagonist can be seen watching over all of the members of the house, but when he looks into Emily's room, he notices that no one is there, as she might have already felt that he always has the upper hand against all of the honey traps. Now that he remembers the face of Seraphy, he feels the urge to get all of them by his side and starts thinking of taking a relaxing bath to cool his head. When he gets to the bathroom, he notices that there is nothing that will go wrong as no one is in there, and he feels like it is better to be on his guard all the time. But when he enters the bath naked, he notices that Emily is already there, and she is reacting as if she was waiting for him the whole time, hiding inside the room. She ends up falling down on the ground, and he lets her have the couch. While he thinks of taking care of the heater, assuming there is some kind of hitman waiting, he notices that Seraphy is entering the bathroom. The protagonist realizes that there is no way something like this is happening, and Seraphy thinks of using the idea of acting like a married couple, and there is no way going back for her. The protagonist feels like attacking her mentally by agreeing to her will be the best option for him and thinks of going along with her in the bath. When she finally shows her melons in front of him, the protagonist thinks of avoiding the situation after all, and she feels like there is no way he would be refusing her after all this. But she mistakenly slips her feet and falls down on him naked, which starts to clash in his mind that he is unable to even think what he should be doing right now. Seraphy thinks that the protagonist will start to consider her as some kind of pervert, and when the protagonist sees that she is not doing anything, he feels like she must not be a spy after all. None of them are able to comprehend what to do, and they keep on assuming inside their head as she thinks of washing his back only for the protagonist to agree to the statement. The whole time in the bath, both of them keep on wondering if they are really spies or not, and the protagonist claims that this whole thing is making him remember their old-time incidents, but a lot has changed between them now. The protagonist mistakenly takes a look at her melons and tries his best to calm himself down to feel Seraphy leaning on him, and they feel like no matter what they are about to do, marriage is a must between them in the future. Just when they feel like they are not about to care anymore and think of letting it all go, Maria rushes inside the bathroom naked, thinking that she will have a bath to get herself sober after a long session of drinking. But she is unable to wonder what they are doing, as she thinks that it is offensive for them not to call her while they are having fun. The next morning, when the protagonist is seen wearing the bandages, Maria keeps on asking him what has happened to him, as if she doesn't know after sobering up in the bath. While they are all leading their life, someone is thinking of a new country behind the scenes and plotting something. How, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for series, can be speaking with Kobayashi, who belongs to the Yashima series, can be thinking of having some fun along the line as some women keep on approaching them in their room. After some time passes, Kobayashi can be seen spending his time with the woman, and instead of engaging in intimate acts with the man, she stabs him with some kind of drug which gets him down. She decides to check on his phone, knowing that Yashima's betrayal is on a whole other level, and some men enter the room to check up on the old man. Just when they think of warning the man, she claims that they are already reaching out to her, and as they begin to get out their guns to attack her, she keeps on taking them all down one by one. As the men are wounded, she claims that she has decided to leave them all. This woman is none other than Maria, who has been working for the CIA from the beginning, and was praised by her superiors because there was not a single mission where she failed to reach her results. However, she thinks that the whole idea is not working out well with the protagonist. When she is pissed about not being able to find success in this mission, the protagonist is unable to wonder what she is even doing, acting like nothing but a madwoman right now in her own room. After seeing them for some time, the protagonist feels like he will need a break right now, and Maria assumes that there must be some kind of secret room for him, as he is always quiet inside his room, and she thinks that it will be better for her to watch something fun instead of reading a book. Knowing that overthinking is not about to do any good for her, she thinks of working her way up, and the protagonist, on the other hand, starts working and looking forward to the equipment that is about to arrive in the evening. When he reaches the living room, he notices that Maria has decorated the whole room with nothing but drinks and ice cubes to make him feel like it is time for him to drink with her. After hearing her for quite some time, the protagonist feels like there is no way to make her understand something, as he is way similar to James, who taught him about life. Soon enough, he begins to ignore her to enter another room to bring a bunch of drinks, adding that he thought of bringing his own drink as her ones might taste like shit. When she notices his behavior, the protagonist claims that communicating is his specialty, so there is no way he would be able to avoid drinking, and he would prefer not to lose while hanging around her. She thinks that it is overly romantic that she is able to drink together, and the protagonist feels like she is approaching him the most usual way of approaching someone from a spy's perspective. Seeing that the usual way is not working right now, she begins to undress herself, and the protagonist's heart begins to beat the heaviest way possible, and he is unable to wonder how easily she could have done it in the first place. This time, the protagonist starts remembering the old Maria to get away from drastic thoughts, but the more he thinks of the past, he is unable to wonder how she turned out like this all of a sudden. The more she pours a drink for him, he feels like there is no way he would be able to turn his back on her now. As he used to obey her thoughts in the past as well, the protagonist keeps on chugging her drink, and she is unable to wonder how he managed to drink 40% proof Thunderball in one go. On the other hand, the protagonist is trying his best to surpass her honey trap and claims that it is her turn to drink now. Knowing that she will have to do everything in her grasp to make him lose, she decides to play along the line obeying the rules, and remarks that the one who will stop drinking will be the one to lose. When the 7th cup finishes, both of them are way out of their mind, and the protagonist mistakenly pours the next one on her melons directly. But the look on her looks too hard for him to even ignore right now as he keeps on looking at her body, and she even begins to hold her melons to make him drink whatever is floating on her body now. Even though the protagonist feels like it is about to become rather ridiculous, it is his turn to drink, and he has no way other than obeying her rule as he tries his best to remember the old Maria. As they both end up obeying the rules of the drinking game, Maria can be seen sleeping on the table, and the protagonist feels like he must have done greatly by using the watch as he mixed some sleeping drugs in the alcohol. He knows that he would end up losing to her if it was a fair fight. Just when the protagonist checks up on the alarm for the delivery, the protagonist gets surrounded by several men outside the door, and they claim that they are here to take Maria away, and they are the same ones who she has beaten in the hotel before running away. Even though the protagonist politely claims that he is not about to fulfill their request, they end up taking out their guns to end up being shot by the protagonist. The leader of the goons remarks that it is not his task to protect someone like her as she keeps on deceiving a lot of men using her body. But while they keep on blabbering, the protagonist remembers what Maria used to be in the past and remarks that he is not about to let them live for looking down on someone like her. When Maria wakes up after some time, the protagonist holds a glass of water for her, and she thinks of calling it a day as she leaves the task of cleaning for him. This whole time when the protagonist was conversing with the man, she was awake the whole time, and she thinks of being together with him one day as if she is ready to bring him to the Sia's side, and they are both naive enough to think that they are not acting like spies now. Then at night, Seraphi comes in with some shopping bags, claiming that she decided to stretch her legs and visited Yuno's shop the whole time, and the protagonist is unable to wonder why she is avoiding going to college. The next situation revolves around Kagurazaka University, which is the University of Spy, and the protagonist feels rather estranged about investigating a university on his own, and he is even disguising himself as a normal student. It seems that he is bound by the rules this time around to prevent the leakage of the research results, as some kind of mastermind is behind it. When he was about to accept the mission, his whole federation was confused about it and thought that it would be hard for him to maintain 2 missions at once, but he took it in the end anyway as he was able to maintain the 2 at once. Even though the protagonist feels like he is being used by the section head, he cannot help it anymore. The professor named Takuchi Hiroshima, he needs to make sure that he is not caught by any kind of spy who will eventually leak their research information. Knowing that the professor would have been thrown away if he was useless, the protagonist thinks of making sure that nothing goes wrong or against his mission. Then when he goes on to knock on the door, he realizes that someone is behind him, and it is none other than Seraphi, who is shocked to see that he is in there even though he is not supposed to be there. Then, to keep the facts hidden, he claims that he is here to talk to the student department to say that he could arrange for the shared house, but she feels rather suspicious of him being here. Then when he asks about her subject here, she claims that she belongs to the Department of International Politics, and he thinks that the mastermind behind the whole mission is none other than her. But she ends up feeling like he must be a stalker, and she feels like blushing after realizing that he keeps following her around the whole time. The whole thing makes her feel like the honey trap was a success after all, and he must be bursting in love with her for now. As he needs to get into the lab, he feels like he should get her away from this room as soon as possible and thinks of having a coffee with her, which makes her feel like he is asking for a date with her. She ends up taking the opportunity, knowing that there is no better way than moving forward with a date, and the professor keeps on chatting with someone inside the room. She keeps on making him understand that he will have to throw away Yashima's research as soon as possible, adding that she will end up becoming his property if he does that for her. The professor feels like he should be proud enough, adding that seals can only use it for peace and not for war, as there are no questions along the line. Soon enough, the girl undresses and dresses up as a cat girl while he keeps on clicking the provoking photos with her. The man feels like he is back in his youth, and he is unable to even wonder how he can have fun with the loli ahead of him. She even lets him take a closer look at her undies. Hold up, she is not a minor. At least the professor is having this kind of experience in his life for the first time, by taking photos though. On the other hand, when the protagonist and Seraphi keep on having a date, everyone keeps on surrounding them after seeing their beautiful faces and thinks of changing the place for a bit to reach someplace alone with each other so they are able to avoid such attractions. Then Seraphi feels like she is quite nervous, knowing that the protagonist is paying too much attention to her, as if he is about to confess to her right now. She thinks of having private moments with her and starts to get hot, but in the middle of it, the protagonist asks her a question about her studies, which shatters her thoughts in the middle of it, leaving her in an awe. When he asks her about politics, she keeps on saying the unwanted details, and he suggests that she should do good in her studies, and in the middle of their conversation, something uncanny happens. As soon as he sees that the professor is moving with some of the luggage with him with some unknown men, the protagonist claims that he has something important to do and leaves her all alone. When the professor keeps packing the bags, the protagonist comes in to ask him something, and he holds his gun to hear what kind of relationship he has with the goons with him. Soon enough, the professor starts seeing bodies and asks the protagonist to accompany him, and the girl thinks of returning the favor the next time as she leaves the premises behind them. On the other hand, Seraphi is rather nervous about the cafeteria in the school premises, and she thinks of checking out as she has never attended something like this in her whole life.